Mr. Anber.
Monsieur Cassavin.
How's it going?
I'm good. It's about time we've done this.
Well, exactly. And for those of you who are maybe wondering, first of all, I'm Matt Cassavin. This is Russ Anber. Probably don't need any introduction, but me and Russ go way back from Ring 83 days at the Bois de Boulogne Salaberry when I was 17 years old. I'm 30 now, and we've been having nightly, daily discussions, I would say the last 10 years or so, about a range of topics. And for years, Russ has been harassing me that we should be recording this. We should be finding a way to get people to tune in, especially to hear his rants and not necessarily what I have to say, but I'm kind of there to guide him in the process here. And I think we figured now everybody seems to have some sort of podcast or audio version, and bear with us as the setup here is two people who are more substance over style, as you can tell by Russ's headphones from 1998. I got a background that needs a bit of work here, but for now we're going to give this a shot, and we hope people are going to enjoy what you have to say, Russ.
Easy with the 1998. This is from these headgear. Actually, these headphones are from Jean Pascal's training camp in Las Vegas when we were getting ready for the Luchad Butte fight. 50 Cent gave us these as a gift. We each got one as a gift. So I've had it ever since. So I travel with them, listen to music when I'm in the airport or whatever. So finally, they have a productive use to be using it for these podcasts. So it's good. And you know what else, Matt? I do podcasts with some really great people. Like I get invited to do some podcasts with some really great people. And every time I'm doing it, I'm having such a good time talking boxing and sharing the knowledge of boxing and the passion of boxing. And I can't think of anybody more knowledgeable or passionate about boxing than you. And I don't do one with you. So it's insane that we haven't done. Every time I do one, I think we have to do this. So I'm glad that we're doing this now. It's good.
And by the way, 50 Cent had for a while his own headphone and Beats company, similar to the Dr. Dre Beats. This is the SMS audio.
I don't know if you could see that, but I mean, I'm sure there's something on the ear there. Okay,
that's going to be as we improve our lighting, of course. And the reason you're doing this from your basement, for those who may not know, is you just got back from London, England for the big Usyk fight, his win over Derek Chisora, 12-round decision. So now you're in 14-day isolation. Enjoying some time to do this as well. Now, let's get to the Usyk fight first and foremost. How you're doing from the flight thing. How crazy has it been for all of you doing this testing and the airport stuff that's going on? And also how you would say the recap overall of Usyk's performance, his first major fight at heavyweight, second overall in the division, but first top 10 opponent or top 15 opponent in Chisora.
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, this isn't just London was the culmination of this trip. This trip of mine started on October 5th, where I traveled to Vegas to start what would eventually lead to the Loma fight. So I went in there a little bit earlier and worked with Janibek on the undercard of Emmanuel Navarrete, who was moving up for a second world title fight. So I went in for that fight. Yeah, a great fighter, so TV friendly, and we can talk about him, but a classy guy, great guy. Emmanuel Navarrete brings action all the time, and a busy fighter. Like he'll fight next week, no problem. He knocks a guy out in one round. I'll fight next week, no problem. Let's go.
Yeah,
great throwback type fighter. So I was down for Janibek's fight. He wins on second round knockout. So that was on the first weekend I was there, which I think was the 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever it was, that Friday. Stayed there in the bubble till Loma arrived, which was on the Monday or Tuesday, I believe. And we stayed in the bubble the whole week right up to Loma's fight against Teofimo Lopez. From there, I couldn't come home because of Canada's quarantine regulations. So I had to stay in Vegas for a couple of days, fly to the UK, stayed there for the week for Usyk. And, and for what I call his debut in the heavyweight division, even though officially it was his second fight, it was his first against a legitimate contender, and then flew back. And sadly as well, and I really want to talk to you about this, is, Regis Levesque passed away when I was away.
Right.
And when I spoke to Daniel Levesque, his son, when I was in London, and he asked me if that they're only allowed a certain number of people in the funeral home, and 25 people, and he wanted to make me one of the 25. And he said, Russ, my father would be really honored if you could come and give a speech. And I told him I'm traveling, that I don't know if I'd be able to. So I said, but let me see when I get to the border, and I'll ask them. So upon arrival in Canada, after the flight, after the Usyk fight, I asked the lady at customs, I said, look, I said, I've been away for 3 weeks. I've been in a bubble for 3 weeks. I've had 8 tests.
Here we go.
8, count them, Matthew. 8 tests I've had, since I've been away. I said, my friend died. I said, is there any way I can go to the funeral? And she said, no. She said, you could have caught it on the plane. I said, well, using that logic, you could have caught it at the dépanneur, like you could have caught it. If that's the logic that you can catch it anywhere, everybody should be quarantined anywhere you go, like if you go somewhere, you should be quarantined. Like, why? So I thought that was a little bit illogical. I thought I was safer, but I guess that's what you got to do. So in the meantime, here I be. And
all right, so get to the Usyk fight and performance with Chisora, though. While you were there, obviously it was a big fight in these. Now it seems like the fall is heating up a little bit after a terrible overall year in boxing due to COVID. Now Usyk did very well in the later stages of the rounds. The first few rounds, Chisora, a lot of people are saying, made him uncomfortable. You could tell that Usyk was kind of feeling him out a little bit, maybe wanting Chisora to get tired out. But was that the strategy going in? And overall, how would you rate his performance? Now, just to be clear, you're the cut man for Usyk for several fights now for a good time. You're not the head trainer, but obviously you're part of the strategy as well. How would you rate his performance?
Look, there are things that I would have done differently in the fight, but I think he did what he was supposed to do. I think he went out there. We knew that Chisora was a monster, and David Hay, for the whole time we were in London, had been yelling from the rafters of what this is going to be. As a matter of fact, he did an interview at one point. He said Chisora is going to make this as rough a fight as possible or get disqualified trying. Like that's how desperate
right.
Like this is how rough they were going to go with this fight. Okay. And I think based on the preparation that Usyk did in the Ukraine and knowing what Chisora was going to bring, I think those early rounds were simply, okay, we're giving them away. We're just going to let the big man, press on the gas, take it to me, try to impose his strength, because the whole time everybody's saying not big enough, not strong enough, doesn't punch hard enough, all these things that you're the smaller guy. Okay, it's pretty obvious you're going to come and you're going to try to take that make that fight a very physical fight. So I think he gave those away. To me, it was more so of, okay, we're not going to do anything more than, oh my God, the guy beat me up for 3 rounds and I won 3 rounds. That wasn't the case. And I think as the fight progressed and you could see Chisora slowing down, you could see his breathing becoming more labored. I think Usyk, took control of the fight. And in the corner, I've got to tell you, my honest feeling and gut feeling in the corner, I never sweated at any time. Like there was never any concern. If anything, I think around the 8th round, I would have turned around and said, now, no more stepping back. You either hold your ground, or you're pushing him back. No more moving back. Plant your feet, protect the perimeter. If he comes, let him come to something. Otherwise, move him back, pressure. And I think if he would have done that, I'm convinced he gets the stoppage, But
what about the power, though, of Chisora? How did you think he reacted to the power of fighting, the first time a big puncher in the heavyweight division?
How do you think he reacted?
Well, I think in the first few rounds, I don't know, I wouldn't use the word panic. That would be an exaggeration, but he did seem to be somewhat concerned, the body language point of view. But maybe I was wrong. Like if at the end of the fight, nowhere at any point, let me be clear, that he was significantly hurt or showed to be in trouble. But
ever.
Compared to some of his fights in the cruiserweight division, where he would always be much more dominant in terms of volume punching than he would in the heavyweight division, in this fight against Chisora, the first few rounds, I wasn't so sure how comfortable he was. But clearly, I'd even, like you mentioned, he could have maybe stopped him. You saw at some points during the later stages of the last minute or so, like he would be pressing, and then it only seemed like he'd be running out of time. The bell would ring by the time Chisora was really on the ropes and in a difficult situation. He needed like an extra 30, 45 seconds to maybe really hurt Chisora and take him out.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, I have to respect the corner and the trainers that he has that he's worked with in the Ukraine. So I have to respect that. I can't. I have no place, and it's not professional for me to override that. But like I said, I think the reason he was getting him late was because he was spending a lot of time backpedaling, waiting for the right opportunity instead of imposing himself in the opportunities where he could have. But that's, I mean, that's how I felt. That's my experience telling me that. But he did what he did. I think
Yeah.
I think the where he had him hurt, I think would have come earlier had he not backpedaled as much in the later rounds, or let's say after the 8th round. I think from the 8th round on, he could have come out to the center of the ring and stood there and said, "I'm protecting this perimeter. You enter this zone, you're going to get nailed. If you don't enter this zone, and I'm going to move you back." So I think that would have been the right chess move to play. And Mark Ramsey and I have had this discussions. We had this discussion. Obviously, it's easier to communicate with Mark in the corner and having known him a long time. We did the same thing with Butte and with Diakanu, where I would tell Mark, now, no, that's it. I'm backing up. Finish. Now we hold our ground, And so there would be
And when Jean Pascal
strategy.
was the fighter, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
So like, not my place to make that call then and there, but that's okay. He did what he had to do. He did what he felt comfortable doing and confident doing. So I even thought that he probably might have got hit more at times when he was trying to leave that perimeter, and he'd get caught with the looping shots coming around from Chisora. Whereas if he would have pressed a little bit, those looping shots would have gone around. So
Yeah.
but he did what he had to do. And as far as the power is concerned, I use this analogy, and I thought it's right. If you remember the 1961 movie The Hustler with Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, they play a long time, yeah.
Yeah, Paul Newman breaks off, and when he finishes the break, he says, "I didn't leave you much." And Jackie Gleason looked at the rack and said, "You left enough." So when people say, does he not have enough? Does Usyk not have enough power? He has enough. He has enough power for the heavyweight division.
Well, then that brings me to the Joshua fight. That's what people now are expecting based on Usyk's comments. He's a mandatory for one of Joshua's titles. Anthony Joshua has a fight against Kubrat Pulev in December, another one of his mandatories. Some people are saying maybe there wasn't enough from Usyk to really be a favorite against Joshua. Well, how likely do you think we see that fight next? Or do you think there may be some other developmental fights that Usyk needs at the heavyweight division before going after Joshua?
I'm on the record with having said, and I spoke to Alex Krasiuk, his promoter, about this from K2. I spoke to Egis Klimas, his manager, when he was first going to make the move into the heavyweight division. And before COVID hit, I called them both. I said, don't even fight somebody from the heavyweight division. The next fight, you want to go in the heavyweight, from cruiserweight to the champion of the world, Anthony Joshua, bang, right away. That's the fight I believe that he should have gone after, because that's the cruiserweight champion of the world, even maybe entering the ring at the time as still the cruiserweight champion of the world,
Right.
That would have been great. So no, I don't think he needs to do anything that's going to prepare him more for the heavyweight division. I don't believe that for a second. He's ready. I think this fight, it's not going to come down to single punching power, because yes, he doesn't quite have the punching power of, say, an Anthony Joshua. I'll give you that, but that doesn't mean it's not enough to hurt Anthony Joshua. An accumulation of conditioning, of volume of punches, coupled with a 215, 220 pound man hitting you, it starts to hurt after a while. So don't think it doesn't. So he definitely has enough power to get, maybe he doesn't starch them all with one shot, but everybody respects him. And I said that about Chisora as well. They say, oh, Usyk can't punch. Well, he wasn't walking through him, was he? He was being very, Usyk, Chisora just wasn't walking through those shots.
Okay, two things. Chisora, and after the fight, to get back to Chisora for a second here, we met you guys in the locker room. You had a good moment, shared some burgers. Did he mention at all the power of Usyk? Did he say anything about that? And also, in terms of Joshua, he was ringside, I believe, for this fight, or he was close by. Did you get to talk to him at all? Did you get a chance to talk to him or speak with him?
Unfortunately, not. There's 3 people I wanted to talk to that were in the building that day. One was Anthony Joshua, but they were far from the ring, and I was hoping to see them after the fight, but they didn't stick around, so I didn't get to see them. One was Anthony Joshua. I wanted to say hi to, because despite the fact that he might fight my guy Usyk, he's a dear friend of mine that I respect immensely, and I think he's a poster boy for boxing. He's like Usyk, like the class, the above of the sport. Like, he's bigger than the sport. He'll talk to people, he'll sign the autographs. For me, he's a great athlete, a man, a real sportsman. Like, I love the guy, and I wanted to say hi to him. His friend, who is his advisor, close friend to him, David Ganza. I wanted to see him because David's a great supporter of ours, and I love David. He's a nice guy. And the other guy I want to speak to was Eddie Hearn's father, which is Barry Hearn, because Barry Hearn loves pool and snooker, and I wanted to talk to him about that. But unfortunately, I didn't get to see any of them. So, but right after the fight, if you watch the video, because there's no crowd and there's only a select few people in the building, Usyk, when he left the ring, said, "Hello, Anthony. How are you, Anthony?" And so the guy's right there. He could hear him, So I think that was good. I think it's a great matchup. This giant, talented, gifted heavyweight champion of the world, built like a Greek god, taking on the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world, who's moving up to fight him. And now everyone thinks, based on this performance against Chisora, you didn't knock Chisora out. Easy pickings for Joshua. I think it makes for such an interesting fight.
Okay, well, so then Joshua's fighting Pulev in December. I guess no concerns there, right? Because we see the upset with Andy Ruiz against Joshua. Pulev's a technically sound fighter, but doesn't bring so we're assuming Joshua is going to beat Pulev. Like, I think almost everybody in the boxing world is, right?
I think so. You got to make him the favorite for sure. It's boxing. Anything can happen, of course, but it happens.
By the way, Barry Hearn, the father of Eddie Hearn, like you mentioned before, had a great quote a few weeks ago where unfortunately Barry had COVID, recovered, but said he had COVID through his son Eddie, and he was quoted as saying, "I left my son an empire, he left me COVID."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty funny. But okay, so we talked about Joshua, we talked about Usyk, and you said Joshua, somebody that you respect and great heavyweight, and there's other big name heavyweights. We know about Fury being the man now in the division, but the one man who made news on the same Saturday that Usyk was fighting Chisora was, of course, Deontay Wilder, somebody you know very well. He posted a video online. It's been all over the boxing news lately about a few things. First of all, it was the first time we've really heard him make a big statement since his loss, after initially saying, of course, blaming a little bit the 50-pound costume walking into the ring. Now he attacked Fury on several points. He said Fury, in the first fight and in the second, tried to cheat with the gloves, and I want you, get your opinion on that, how the technique he was saying of not having a fully loaded hand into the glove, but really trying to push the glove down and trying to have loose space that he can hit with an open palm. He accused Mark Breland, somebody you know well, of being disloyal because Mark Breland threw in the towel in the rematch. He said even the water at one point might have been poisoned. Like, a lot of people have been criticizing Wilder based on these comments. He says he's going to try and find a way to get the rematch, the third fight against Fury. He's going to sue if need be. So there's a lot to unpack from those comments. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go tune in on his Twitter page or Instagram page. But where do we start, Russ? First of all, the accusations, and maybe overall the sentiment of what he said to Mark Breland, or about Mark Breland.
That to me was the most hurtful of all things. There's not a lot of really outstanding stand-up people in the game of boxing. Mark Breland is one of those stand-up, outstanding guys. Arguably the greatest amateur the United States has ever produced, Olympic gold medalist, two-time world champion, as quiet as a mouse. Like, if you don't pay attention and listen to him and maybe see his lips move, you can barely hear him speak. That's how humble and refined he is. A great, great gentleman. As a matter of fact, like I said about Regis Levesque, where you couldn't fill a phone booth with the amount of people who have a bad thing to say about Regis Levesque, you couldn't fill that same phone booth with the amount of people who have a bad thing to say about Mark Breland. And I would venture to say that includes all 100 amateur opponents that he beat in his amateur career. So this guy is stellar. To attack him like that twice, not just only attack him by firing him for saving your life, saving you in the ring. In fact, saving you in the whole, giving you the opportunity that you could have a third fight. Because if you let Fury finish the job, there is no third fight. There is no payday.
You think the knockout would have been that bad, right? You don't think it would just would have been?
Of course it would have been. Of course it would have been. You know, it was only a matter of time. You know, like it was getting worse as each round was going on. The fight wasn't getting better in Wilder's favor. It wasn't stopped at a time where he was coming on. It was stopped when he's getting beat more and more. This only puts more damage on you. And Breland got him out of there right at the time that, first of all, if you want to create some kind of controversy, oh, you shouldn't have stopped the fight, more reason for a rematch. The blame goes on Breland. He stopped the fight. I would have kept going. Perfect. He did you a favor. Instead, you chastise him and fire him for doing that, for stopping you, for saving your life. You fire him. Then to make matters worse, you question his credibility, his honesty, his reputation, and say that he spiked your water. Now, this is not me saying this now. This is Wilder's own words saying this, that Breland spiked the water. If he did, wouldn't it have shown up in the drug test after the fight?
Yeah. And wait, are we sure though? Usually you've been in Vegas for a lot of these big fights. Does every fighter get tested post-fight?
Oh, for a championship fight, there's no doubt.
Right.
Had to have been. Absolutely.
Okay. And so I agree with all of the points you're saying. The other thing is, who's going to train Wilder going forward? I don't think that's been decided, or at least I haven't seen anything. He's going to want to probably be with a high-profile name. He was with Mark Breland and JD's, of course, our friend JD's for years and years. And I think Jay's still in the equation, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Jay plays a great role and always has in the training of Deontay. And he plays a great role in the managing of Deontay. I think he's been given a really rough ride in what happened, and people didn't give him the respect that he deserved for having been the guy who played a pivotal role. I mean, everybody now is like seeing Deontay as the champion of the world, but before he got there, when no one knew who Deontay was, when no one cared, JD's was the guy that moved him all this way to become heavyweight champion of the world. He's the one who surrounded him with Breland. He's the one who did those things and kept him fighting. He's the one who brings in the sparring partners that they need to get ready for a fight. Jay plays a great role and will continue to do so. Malik Scott has also always been part of the Wilder camp. I was part of the camp for 5 years, so I know what goes on inside that camp. I don't know that they're going to replace him with a high-profile fighter. I'm not sure, a high-profile trainer. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but it's going to be an interesting look as to what they're going to do. I heard that Malik was coming in, but I have no confirmation on whether that's true. If he's coming in full-time or not.
Okay, what about the glove accusation? Now, this is confusing for two things, because he said, one, that maybe the gloves, some sort of substance was put that would lead him to have a welt on his head, and it was something to harden the glove. We've heard about hardening hand wraps in the past, and we've seen, of course, Panama Lewis in the history of boxing take out some material in the glove so it goes knuckle almost directly to bone and stuff. But how about the accusation they would have put something on the surface, which, of course, the Nevada State Athletic Commission has come out and completely said there's no chance. The inspectors checked everything, especially in this day and age. So explain maybe the process of what goes on in locker rooms of what we've seen when the inspector checks out the gloves, and then what could he have done in between rounds to maneuver the glove so that his hand, because the images you see on the internet, it looks like the glove is not completely filled like a 10-ounce glove usually is. It looks loose, but what can you tell us from your experience? What do you expect from those accusations?
Matthew, you know, I count on you to make sure I'm talking about the right things, right? Because you're smarter than I am. So I'm counting on you to make sure you're pointing me in the right direction.
All right.
The accusations that they're talking about, did that stem from the first fight or the second fight?
Well, definitely the first fight. He talked about when Ricky Adams was in the corner and trying to lower the glove in between rounds. Now, I don't know at what point he thinks that it carried over to the rematch. That part to me wasn't so clear, but definitely the glove issue in the first fight he complained about. And then in the rematch, I know he's claiming that there was a substance put on the gloves that hardened the gloves and gave him damage towards the orbital, like next to his orbital bone here, next to his.
I
eyebrow.
didn't hear that he put something on the glove. I heard Wilder say he had something in the glove. There was a hard object in the glove. That's
Right,
what I
right.
took from what Wilder said. Now, that said, what they're claiming, and I don't, first of all, there's no way that I believe that the gloves were tampered with or the hand wraps were tampered with. JD's was there for the putting on of the gloves and the hand wraps. So I don't believe that there was any tampering going on. What people are saying that are taking I don't want to call it a conspiracy theory, but the claims as made by
Right.
Wilder and his supporters is that he would pull his hand just enough out of the glove, out of the fingertip area of the glove, to curl a fist inside the hand compartment of the glove, thereby causing the glove to kind of be wobbly. But current now, in order to do that, you have to wear a glove that has ample space in there to be able to do that. And Fury has pretty big hands, so depending on the size of the glove they made or what it was made of, for him to do that, how can you prove that? I don't know. Right now, those are accusations. I do not believe that that had anything to do with what happened in the second fight. I don't think that was even brought up or even an issue as to what happened in the second fight.
Okay, and what advantage would let's say for a second here that his claim about the fist, like you're saying, being kind of pulled back and you're able to remove it before the full fist, what advantage would that give then to Fury by doing that? Wouldn't it jeopardize possibly an injury as well, though, by doing that?
Of course it could jeopardize an injury. Of course it could, because you're punching, with your wrapped hand, if you will, and the only thing protecting it is the palm side of the glove, which of course has no padding on it and is only leather. It's only a leather skin, right? So it has no padding. So when you would hit, I mean, if you tried to hit with your finger knuckles kind of thing, that could hurt. That could hurt on the side of your head. Could give you welts, if you're hitting like that. I find it difficult to imagine that he'd be able to land, hard with the knuckle portion, as in a knockout blow. But again, we're speculating that was even done. And there's the video that's done on it, that I've seen where they showed the video where the glove kind of goes like this, and moves. I don't know.
Okay. Have you ever heard or seen this accusation that you can recall in your years of boxing before? Because it was the first time that I heard specifically that accusation, not putting something inside a glove or hardening the wraps that we've heard and we've seen, but that specific detail, I don't recall.
No, I've never heard that, and that's quite amazing. Just when you think you've seen it all in 41 years in the game, you get something else that comes out like this. So yeah, it is a first, and it's sad that these kind of things have to happen, from both sides, from somebody who potentially might have done something to somebody complaining about it. The fact that you have to that has to be, that it can't just be a fair thing, and then we wonder why athletic commissions are so anal about being in the dressing room. You want to be there, here, this, in the corner, 2 inspectors at a time, because people, for whatever reason, whether there is an intent or the perception of cheating, it's so sad, that has to happen. Like it's a violent enough game as it is, and believe me, the padding, this thickness of padding in a 10-ounce glove on guys who weigh 270 pounds really doesn't matter. And it's dangerous game enough as it is to have to resort to doing stuff like that. Panama Lewis did it, with Luis Resto, which to me, still to this day, remains maybe the most hideous crime ever committed in boxing. And I say that, unless someone could remind me of something else, that to me is one of the most hideous crimes ever committed, that you purposefully remove the padding from the glove and eventually led to the death of Billy Collins as a result. Glove tampering, hand wrap tampering, to me is the ultimate sin. The second one is doping, but the first is glove and hand wrap tampering. To me, is the worst.
Do you think a third fight happens? Do you think we see the Fury? Now, Fury's taking an interim fight in December. In the meantime, at least until there's some sort of Shelley Finkel who represents Wilder claiming that they don't pursue the legal route. But Do you think a third fight happens here and ending on this topic? And do you think there's a point of seeing it? Do you think there could be interest now with all this buildup, all this animosity between Wilder? Because Fury hasn't, to this time now, by the time we're recording this, he hasn't officially responded to these claims. Do you think a third fight happens, or do you think it needs to happen?
I saw him respond. I saw a little clip saying you talk about me putting something in my glove. He said all I had in these gloves were these and 270 pounds behind it.
There you go. I meant to, in isolation, you have more time to make sure you see all these videos,
Yeah,
but that's good.
I saw something on Twitter about that. But do I think it'll happen? Personally, I'd rather see Joshua and Tyson Fury if that was to happen before I see Wilder.
Okay,
Wilder,
but now you have Usyk fighting Joshua, right? So that's
right. So I mean, now you're asking me what I like to see it. I'm forgetting about my role with Usyk and just talking in general as a fan. I think people have had 24 rounds of Wilder with or 12 plus, what was it, 8 rounds?
I think,
7 rounds,
about 20 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I think maybe and now Fury's going to have a fight. He's going to fight somebody on the 5th of December. I think the proper thing to do would be for Wilder to also fight somebody, knockout, whatever, prove that he's back instead of just coming in on a because of a contractual obligation that affords him a third fight, in a row with Tyson Fury. So I think in the interest of boxing, I would say he should probably fight somebody else, make a claim for himself, make a statement for himself.
Well, we'll see what happens on that end. This past weekend, we talked about the Usyk fight. There's another big event. Gervonta Davis, Leo Santa Cruz turned out to be a heck of a fight. The concern going in was with Davis be able to carry over his power in the later rounds. He didn't have to really deal with that, but he in terms of opponents, Santa Cruz was by far his best opponent. And in some stages, he really had to dig deep and fight well. Davis did against Santa Cruz, but Santa Cruz got a little bit overconfident. Davis lands the KO of the year, probably. It's all over social media. The big left uppercut on the counter right hand, slipping the right hand, landing the left uppercut. Overall, his performance, what would you say? Is that over expectations, or are we still maybe somewhat concerned that when he does get into the later rounds, it's still an unknown territory at this point because he knocked out a smaller guy in Santa Cruz?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Santa Cruz is a talented fighter. He's a gifted fighter. He's good, but he's a featherweight. Like we have to remember that he's a featherweight. Yep. Gervonta Davis is an immense talent with massive power. I think there was a lot of similarities in Loma Lopez and Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz. It's one thing to be handicapping guys and giving up weight to certain people, but when you give up weight to a gifted and powerful guy, you're giving up a lot. And if you watch, I think the thing that people, I don't know if they missed it. I'm not going to say they missed it, but the thing that I saw prior to the knockout was first punch, he gets hit, doesn't even bother him. Second punch, boom, doesn't even bother. Third punch, he never even moved him. Like 3 punches bounced off him. He never even thought about taking a step back. It's just like his body kind of absorbed the punch without him even having to move. And then he ripped that shot. I don't think you do that and just, casually back off against somebody like Teofimo Lopez. I don't think you're doing that. So the size was a big difference. And you're right. I think Leo might have gotten confident. Like you say, he was doing well because he's such a good fighter. He was doing well, and he kind of let that hang out there a little bit, and bang, I said, boom, I could hit you. Yeah, boom, boom, I could hit you. And Gervonta Davis, for all his craziness, is a hell of a fighter.
Well, it's been the discipline, right? He's missed weight a few times. Now he's going to be moving up to 135. This fight was at 130, but the big names and the big fights are at 135. He looks really legit. There's one thing also about the Davis here, a little parenthesis. I noticed Floyd Mayweather, who's really now hyping Gervonta Davis up. He did it for a while with Broner. Now I think Davis has proven himself to be more credible, especially at this stage in Adrian Broner. But I saw Mayweather throughout the fight, and this reminded me of something that we saw in Toronto a few years ago. We were there. You were there for Badu Jack against Adonis Stevenson for their fight in Toronto. I on the undercard, working in the corner of Maslam Agdenis, who's an undefeated young prospect. who we work with as well, Russ and Mo, the coach here at Ring 83. Mayweather is screaming the entire fight instructions to Davis from the ringside when Davis already has his cornermen and his team in the corner. At one point, like, how much is that a bit of a distraction for the corner, thinking they're in between rounds and Mayweather's walking in almost to the corner and yelling instructions, and the coach is trying to give his instructions as well, and Davis has been brought up undefeated by his team in his corner. I thought that was a bit like Mayweather at one point. I know he's trying to be a promoter. I know he's considered one of the best fighters of all time, but shouldn't he sometimes be more of a spectator and not be yelling instructions unless he wants to be directly involved as the chief second or one of the cornermen?
If you want to be that involved, work the corner.
Right.
If you want to be that involved, work the corner. But the fact that he's able to run up to the ring, yell at the referee, yell instructions whenever he wants, go back to his seat, get up and yell at the ring. You know, he does it. He's able to get away with it because he's Floyd, you know.
Anyway, he must have been happy with for sure he was happy with the performance. It was, look, I don't know how much of the instructions Mayweather gave to Davis factored into the win. That I'm not entirely sure. But look, Davis is exciting. We have Ryan Garcia, who's fighting Luke Campbell in December. Devin Haney. We already talked about Teofimo Lopez, who beat Lomachenko. And now Devin Haney's fighting this Saturday against Gamboa, who Davis previously fought against Gamboa. Now, it turned out to be a closer fight at some point, or Davis didn't knock out Gamboa in the early stages like some predicted when they fought. Do you think Devin Haney stops Gamboa? Quick prediction here, or your assessment of that fight. Do you think he does anything different than Davis did when Gamboa ended up fighting with a torn Achilles for several rounds?
Listen, I called it in the fight. When everyone else, I know that they missed it because I watched it. I said he tore his Achilles tendon. I could see just the way his foot was reacting because I've had a torn Achilles tendon. I knew exactly, and he did that in the second round. He did it in the second round, and I don't think that Gervonta Davis was anywhere near as physically ready for Gamboa as he was for Leo Santa Cruz.
Oh, no doubt.
I really think he took Santa Cruz seriously. I think he trained seriously for it. He was very serious about that fight. The Gamboa fight was almost a lackadaisical performance, against a guy who his best years are behind him, unfortunately. Father Time gets you. And, Gamboa, as gifted and as talented as he is, his best years are behind him. And I think that Devin Haney, this will be a real coming out party for him, if you will, to show that, he's for real. I think Devin Haney's a very talented fighter as well. And I think Gamboa is going to try, but I can't see him upsetting Devin Haney.
And look, and Haney's the lesser profile currently of the four. If you include Davis, Lopez, and Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney has a lesser profile building towards it. But I think all those four fighters right now, if these guys can face each other in the years to come, that's the next stage of pay-per-view possibly stars in boxing. I think that's when the Pacquiaos will officially retire, now that Mayweather is gone. You have the heavyweight division that's more of a factor than it's been in really 15 years probably. But outside of that, I think those are the young up-and-coming stars that have a platform. They bring excitement. I think that'll be interesting. But before I move on here to this next subject, before I forget the Davis fight, there's something we talked about that we wanted to mention here is there was also a little bit of glove controversy. Davis came out and explained the situation where we see him in warm-ups with grand gloves. He ends up changing after the pad work to a Winnings glove that had really situation we don't see frequently in boxing. So people were confused. There was no labeling on the gloves and people were kind of accusing, was there any other dirty trick? And Davis had to come out and explain, listen, I was uncomfortable in the gloves. I had to make a switch. The commission was there. They approved everything. Your thoughts on that and how it's a rare move, but we do see changes and the spares are there for a reason in case a torn glove happens, or if the fighter wants to make a change actually at last minute before going in.
Matt, there's one thing that bothered me about that, and I don't know the answer. So it bothers me, but I don't know the answer of what happened. Yes, it happens that you've put a glove on, you've had your hand wrapped, you put a glove on, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit as you're not comfortable in it. So you bring in your spares, you bring in the other pair. I don't really have an issue with that. That doesn't bother me. My concern is, did the Santa Cruz people know about it? That's, to me, it's not enough if the commission said, yeah, here's another pair. That's not the case, because you selected these gloves for the fight. You didn't select the other one. So if you're going to change them, this was the same controversy that happened with Oscar Rivas and Dillian White in the UK. Big, that was a real glove gate. They switched the gloves on us, never told us, and then wouldn't let us see the gloves that they were putting on. So if that's the same thing that happened to Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz, I don't care that the commission was there. I don't care that the inspectors was there. The corner didn't know, and that's not fair. That's not the agreement. What's the point of having a glove selection and you choose the gloves and everybody signs off on them if in the next day you can just say, oh yeah, you know those gloves I wanted? Bring me the other ones instead. No, that's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to use the gloves you choose. And if you want to change them, no problem. The other camp has to know about it. So that bothered me. And the other thing that bothered me, after seeing a picture today on the internet where there was a close-up, like you said, there was no branding on the glove. Now, I don't know what was beneath the tape, but I have never.
I saw the winning logo on the cuff at the end when they unwrapped.
So, okay, so that's fine. I didn't see that. I've never seen a winning glove without the logo here.
Right.
So, there's a little tiny heat stamp on it. Did they take it off for some reason? I don't know, but I didn't see that on there. And that bothers me a little bit. So because there should be some kind of an identification of the glove to know exactly what it is he has and what model of winning. Is it a recent model? Is it an old model? Like, I don't know, because all the new models, the same weekend, the Monster knocked out Jason Maloney. He had winnings on. You could see winnings from the fifth row
That's
back
right.
that it was winning gloves. So that kind of bothered me that there was no marking on the glove. But I'm surprised nobody has said anything about it, but what are you going to do?
Russ, something we're going to do here going forward. First of all, as we go along in this process, these conversations we'll be doing on a weekly basis. We're going to want fan interaction. We're going to want people to send their questions via Twitter. Even sometimes, listen, we're in Quebec. There's a huge boxing base. When we go into more Quebec-based stories and Quebec-based intrigue fighters, we'll take some French ones as well. Both of us speak French. There's no issues there. So I want the fans to be involved. And one of the things we also want to do is give you a platform to have this. You call me a lot of times to give me rant on a ton of topics. There's no shortage of topics of things that are pissing you off. So in the let's say start here though, for this upcoming rant, you told me a little bit here in the preview that one topic that you wanted to discuss and you were to stick with boxing, but it could be at other points, different sports or even anything else in life. But right now for this specific, something that's on your mind, kind of your soapbox, your rant of the week, and it's due to gloves and the commissions and what's going on now in professional boxing. We're seeing more and more brands in professional boxing, and maybe that's something that you think needs to be double checked. Or can I have your exact thoughts on that? What's your rant this week?
Matthew, I love boxing. I love gloves. I love everything that's involved with boxing. And I love that we care for fighters. I think it's important that we have to care for fighters. Lately, and I'm saying this like in the last few years, there has been like 1,000% increase on everybody becoming a glove manufacturer. People are getting emails from manufacturers in Pakistan saying, I can make gloves for you. So everybody's buying gloves and putting their label on it, and they have gloves. A few more ambitious people, whether through copying other brands that already exist, are trying to become glove makers themselves and trying to infiltrate the boxing equipment business, and are making gloves and shipping them in to athletic commissions for approval. Now, I'm fortunate that I have a good reputation with the athletic commissions. They call me, they ask me questions, I offer my advice, I tell them what I think should be. And one of the things we spoke about, and I've mentioned this on numerous occasions, weight cannot be the only deciding factor of the criteria for a boxing glove. It doesn't make sense. You cannot have weight without having dimensional size. Because there is no national commission, there's no worldwide governing body to impose this, anybody can basically make whatever they want. It's made of leather. There's a padding inside, and it weighs 8 ounces or 10 ounces. That's the only criteria that exists. There's not even there's not even a criteria really for an athletic commission to say, hey, we refuse based on this. You don't have this.
Hold on here, though,
And
Russ. As somebody who worked with Rival, I'll let you finish in a sec. But I remember at times where I had to go to different state athletic commissions in Connecticut and stuff when we wanted to start getting the gloves more and more approved across the board. And they did have standards, and sometimes they were testing the glove, they were looking at it, and they said, no, this doesn't pass inspection for security reasons. Now, they weren't always able to give the specific details as to why, but they didn't like compared to other marks.
It's a unilateral decision. There's nothing on the regulations that has a description of what should be in a glove, what it should be. New York started putting it on. New York has it built as to how a glove should be how much of the weight should be in front of the glove, how much should be the other. No other commissions have that. And anytime we were doing that, the only reason we had to do that was because we were an unknown brand. Nobody knew about our gloves. So they said, what's this, Rival? No, you got to send it in. We got to check it out. And then they would check it out and see that it's okay and it's just as good as anything else that they're approving. And they did, because in the past you just had a few stalwarts that were there all the time. Everlasting Grant and Winning and Reyes. They were there. Any of those companies could have put out a new glove and would have been approved immediately based on their name and their reputation. When we came along, no one knew who we were, so we got to check them out, and they did. And now we have a reputation of making a good glove, a solid glove, a fair glove with proper padding, and it fits well, etc. But more and more gloves are emerging that do not meet that criteria and are still being approved because the commissions don't necessarily have an out to say, no, you didn't meet our criteria. There's no standard for it. So ours are designed differently. We design it differently. It's made differently, but it's made of leather, there's padding in it, and it weighs 8 ounces or 10 ounces. So it's difficult for commissions to turn around and say, no, it's not approved. And I find that sad because, like I said, you cannot have weight without having dimension. You have to have dimensional size in order to so an 8-ounce glove cannot be less narrow than this and no longer than that. 10 ounce, the same thing. They have to fall into a certain size pattern, because what a lot of companies are doing, and especially the new company they're coming on, they're taking an 8-ounce size glove, they're inserting weight rubber or whatever into the wrist area to make it weigh 10, but the dimensions of the glove are an 8.
Yeah.
And that's not right. That's tantamount to cheating. So that bothers me when I see that. I don't think any of the reputable glove makers want that. I think the reputable glove makers want to make a real glove that's, defines a 10 ounce. When you look at it, you say, that's a 10 ounce. You look at the other one, that's an 8 ounce. Like what we have been accustomed to accepting as 8 and 10 ounce gloves. Because I'll tell you, I could make you a glove that you could probably barely get your bare fist into that would weigh 8 ounces. And that's not right. That's just not right. So
you think there's gonna have we'll see any changes on that? Like, I know sometimes California has an annual summit. There's been other states, and the ones that are obviously the most busy in boxing try to always implement different changes and stuff. You think
I hope so. I hope so, because but if we look at an example of hand wrapping in the state of California, which is what I agree with, you put the gauze, you put the tape, and the inspector puts the magic marker on it. End of hand wrap story. Nevada allows you to do what's called stacking. Gauze, tape, gauze, tape, gauze, tape. One on top of the other until you've decided you finished your hand wrap, until you've decided you finished. And I just don't see the fairness or the logic in doing that, because it leaves yourself open to so many people doing so many different things, and you can't possibly account for all the restrictions that you want to apply to that. How many times can you stack? It's not in the rules. How many times can you put, how much tape can you put? It's not in the rules. So why do you have that? Gauze first, then the tape, then sign off. Done. That's simple. Like there's no room for deviation from that. So if we can't get the states to agree on simple hand wrapping, how are we going to get them to agree on how a glove,
Uh,
defining a glove and how it should be made and the safety of the fighter, going forward. That's probably the thing that frustrates me the most in boxing is even with the good people who want to make change, who want to fix it, are almost handcuffed and powerless to do anything about it because you change something here across the street, doesn't apply.
On that note, we're going to have plenty of weeks, hopefully down the road, to discuss the other issues because there's going to be plenty of boxing and unfairness and stuff like that going forward. Tomorrow, what's the plan, Russ? Isolation. You're looking forward to the end of isolation?
I still got another week of more 10 days of isolation. But Matt, before I go, and this weekend, I think we should talk about this, even though we can't be there, because if this wasn't COVID, I predict that this weekend's funeral for Regis Levesque would have been one of the biggest, most grandiose media attended events in Quebec sporting history. The fact that this man, after the life he put into boxing, is not going to get the send-off that he deserved is sad, really. And it's so unfortunate that he had to die in 2020 because he deserved the fanfare and everything that came with it that would have been his funeral. And I'm talking, there would have been a procession of thousands of people. The church, the funeral home would have been packed to capacity. They would have had to actually keep the casket there for an extra day for the amount of people who would have wanted to pay their respects and tell their stories of Regis Levesque. I'm proud, so proud to say that I've known Regis since 1979. And from when I was a kid, I remember the first time, like, he'd see me, he didn't know who I was, didn't know my name, but he just knew that I was somebody with the boxers. And if he'd see me at the weigh-in or on the night of the fight, hanging around in the lobby of the Paul Sauvé or around the media entrance of the forum when he used to run shows, he'd say, don't get me, laissez rentrer. Let him in. And, he watched my career progress and became a friend, a real friend, even past this time when he was doing business in boxing, when he was retired, he became a friend and we would talk boxing. And I miss now the opportunities more opportunities I could have had to go visit him at Beaubien Deli, where he used to hang out and talk to him. And he'd be sitting in his chair. He'd be sitting like this, smoking, drinking his coffee. And I come up on the side, right? And he'd say, oh, tap, I miss that. I'm going to miss him. And boxing lost a guy worldwide, but especially, Quebec and Montreal lost a guy that will never be replaced. And I've said this before, but everybody who has had success in boxing, especially the fighters, promoters who have had success in boxing, who have become stars here in Quebec, owe a debt of gratitude to Regis Levesque, who made boxing part of the fabric of the soul of the Quebec sporting fan. It's because of him. And in that time, when you were fighting for a Canadian title, he made you feel like you were the champion of the world. And there's not a lot of guys who could do that. So on that note, I tip my hat and my memory to Regis Levesque.
2020 has been rough, right? It's just been a crazy year for a lot of people, and just one of those sad aspects of it. You couldn't get the proper send off, like you mentioned. But just in closing here, I do believe, if I recall correctly, this summer around his birthday, there was at least a gathering that you were able to attend. With a lot of the boxing people, correct? So at least I'm sure he must have been happy to have that moment with all the restriction, everything that's going on in 2020, to at least have that moment outdoors with a lot of the boxing people, which is not the same, of course, as it would proper send off that he deserves now. But I mean, I guess that's something that I'm sure he enjoyed.
It's the best we could do under the conditions. It was the best cards we could play that we were dealt at that time. So what can you do?
Well, on that note, like you said, Russ, we're hoping for better and brighter days ahead, and we're going to hopefully have fun and continue this. We're going to have down the road of some audio, some bells and whistles to add to this conversations that we're going to do on a weekly basis. And, this is a step in the right direction, I think. And you've been asking me for a while, and hopefully we're going to be able to continue for a while, and people are going to enjoy this for what it is. And like I said, hopefully somebody else than my mother listens to this, but I think we have a good chance here of drawing a fan base for the boxing people who like to hear your thoughts.
I hope so, man. Well, this was fun. I'm glad we did this. And like I said, I just love talking boxing. So, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's one of the things that we can
I thought you were going to say you just like talking. I thought you were going to end it there.
Sorry. Both, I guess. So I'm glad we did it. And we don't even have to prepare for it. We can just talk boxing and it just flows like water. So I'm glad we did it. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Take care, Russ. Talk soon.
All right, brother. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.